From Microbe TV, this is Office Hours for Wednesday, the 7th of February, 2024. I'm Vincent Racaniello, and welcome to your viral corner of the internet where you can talk with professionals. It doesn't include me, but other people who join the show, and you can ask them all kinds of questions. And tonight, I have a consummate professional to join us from parasiteswithoutborders.com, trichinella.org, Dickson Despommier. Welcome to Office Hours, sir.
Thank you for inviting me back.
It is your second time here, isn't it?
It is. Now I'm getting to be an old pro.
Well, Dickson
Of
and I
course,
have always wanted
Vincent,
to. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
when we shared an office suite together at Columbia, every day was office hours with us. Every single
Yeah,
day.
we had some good chats. That's where you got to meet Daniel Griffin also, and that's where
Yeah, that's right.
you met Amy. And we
I
had
did.
already known me for many years.
Steve Goff.
Yeah. And so we try to recreate those moments here on the internets
You bet.
with office hours. And maybe Dickson and I will do our own little weekly shtick. Taffy clats. All right. I want to thank our moderators tonight for joining us. We have Les. We have Barb Mack, UK. It's very late there. Thank you for joining us. It's like 2 a.m. or something like that. We have Andrew from New Zealand. Thank you for joining us. And we have Frank from Local Frank and Vanity Nutrition, Local Vanity Nutrition. And I don't see Tom, but no, Tom's not going to be here tonight. Thank you all for joining us, and everyone else, thank you for joining. And tell us tell us where you're from. Look who's here, Dickson. Look who is here.
Amy!
There's Hello, Dickson. Coffee Clutch. Isn't
Yay!
it Cafe Clutch or something like that?
Coffee clutch. Coffee clutch.
What's the proper terminology? 1 a.m. in the UK. Thank you, Barb, for being here. We appreciate it. I have to say, Veronica is from Moscow. Massive snowstorms. So
Right.
her real name is Veronica. That's where Veronica comes from. Isn't that cool?
It is. It is.
I don't know any Russian. I just know Das Vidanya. Is that a thing?
That's pretty good.
Although I could type into a translator and do it. So tell us where you're from, everybody. We would love to know. Impress Dickson at the extent of your presence. PGL Patty is in Massachusetts. It's not too far away, Dickson. You know?
I know where Massachusetts is. I've been there many times.
Nicola is from Italy. 10
10
degrees C. Here, Dickson, the weather is positively fine, actually. It was a rather warm day today.
It wasn't bad at all.
By the way, I have an international clock here, and I know that where is it? I know that in Moscow, maybe Veronica is from it's 4 a.m. Veronica, oh my gosh, you're up awfully early. I guess that's the thing. You're up very early. Let's see here. I know John is from Minneapolis, 48F and cloudy.
48. That's warm.
It's pretty warm.
For Minneapolis, that's warm.
Yeah.
Wonder when ISAT's going to go.
Let's see. Claire is from the UK also. James is from Longmont, Colorado. Noir LeBlanc is from Santa Fe, New Mexico. Lovely. Abdul Aziz is from Saudi Arabia. See, Abdul, I know where you're from.
Wow.
Isn't that cool?
It is.
Mm-hmm. Simon is from the Bay Area. Without power for 30 hours. Sorry about that.
Oh, no. You guys have had some bad weather.
Where, on the West Coast?
Oh, yeah. Lots of mudslides and all kinds of yucky.
Frank Kang is from Chicago, who we all know. Dickson, you missed a nice dinner with Kang.
I did. We can make up for that sometime.
Jam is in Hampton, Virginia. Rima is in Iowa, I believe. Welcome. Peter is from Boulder, Colorado. And Rima says, hello, Professor Dickson.
Hello, Reba H.
Rima H is from Iowa. Ian is also from New Zealand. GSD Bio is from Encinitas, California, Jonathan. Will Newcomb is from Changsha, China, a place I almost visited this year.
Huh.
Wayne is from Urbana.
Been to Urbana.
That's in Illinois. Annie is from Nashville, Tennessee. Have you ever been to Nashville, Dickson?
I have.
Frank
Briefly.
is from Santa Barbara.
Haven't been there, and I always wanted to go.
Santa Barbara?
Yep.
Pete is from the UK, Poole, Dorset.
Oh.
Portland, Oregon. Richard is from Portland, Oregon.
Lovely place.
Angelica Di Nova Lipa is from upstate Manhattan. Wait a minute.
Upstate Manhattan?
Whoa. There's upstate
I
New
look
York.
out the window, I can wave to you.
You're talking about uptown Manhattan, like 160th Street or higher? So Angelica Di Nova Lipa, please explicate what you're talking about there. Are you Nova Lipa? I don't know if it's Italian or not. Angelica Di Nova Lipa. It could be Hispanic. I don't know. Please explain all these things. Okay, Rima and Luna from Iowa, where it's 11C, and feral cats are enjoying the trees. Elizabeth is from West Virginia. A lot of questions for Dickson here. We'll come back to them. Patricia's from Washington, D.C. Laura is Ridgefield, Connecticut. Fabulous Dickson. Silvio Pina is from Burbank, California. She's a Bolognese. And Silvio Pina visited the incubator not too long ago. And
lovely.
Bolognese is a nice sauce if you're going to make it.
It truly is. Truly is.
Okay, Ian is from New Zealand, the South Island. Steve Myers is from Indiana. Lise is from Columbus, Ohio. Tom Hardy is from freezing Salt Lake City. Hat is from Los Angeles. MN is near D.C. Mr. Dareen is from Elgin, Illinois. Carol Wong, our favorite nephrologist, is from rainy Southern California.
Uh-huh.
Oh, look, Verdinika says, yes, you pronounced it correctly. Dos vidania, which means goodbye. It's 4 a.m., but I'm a night owl.
Right.
Thank you for coming.
Indeed.
We won't say das vidania yet.
Not yet.
It's the only word I know in Russian. It's too bad. Hey, I'm looking for someone to translate my lectures into Russian. If anybody knows someone, I will pay.
Oh.
I will pay. I got someone this week to translate them into Spanish. I think we need Spanish, Russian, Chinese.
That's right.
Those are the big ones, right?
And French.
I mean, Russian is spoken not just in Russia, but in all those former colonies or whatever, states.
Careful, you're on air.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to be judicious. A couple of night owls here. Environmental is from Western New York. Here's the other half of Mr. Doreen in Elgin, Illinois. Mary is in El Rito, northern New Mexico. Michael is in Mexico City. Distrito Federale, DF. Gosh, I know that. Kathleen is in South New Jersey. Steve says, Professor Dickson just finished West Nile Story. Great read.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, Angelica is on 190th off Fort Washington. Oh, my gosh. I walked up and down Fort Washington Avenue so many times. And so did Dickson, right?
Many, many, many times.
We were at 168th.
She lives north of the Port Authority.
Yeah, north of the bridge. Yes, that's a good neighborhood, right?
It is. It is.
There's a nice wine store on the street that goes down.
I know that.
Right?
Right.
You cross, you go past the bridge and some more blocks, and then and you turn left, and there's a nice wine store down there.
That's right.
Thank you, Angelica, or Angelica. I don't know. This week I learned that the city in Colombia is called Medellin, with the two L's. When you have two L's, they said.
That's true.
Is that true, Dickson?
It is.
Do you speak Spanish?
No. My 7-year-old grandson speaks fluent Spanish because his father only speaks Spanish to him. So he can
Oh, I
understand
see.
Spanish,
I see.
yeah, he's a hoot.
Molly's from State College, Pennsylvania,
It's a
home of
great place,
Penn
great
State,
place.
right? Yep.
Yep, yep,
Been
yep,
there a
yep,
few times.
yep.
All right, Garrett is from Austin, Texas, where I will be in March. Let me tell you, we're going to do a TWIV at the University of Texas on Monday, March 11th, and it will be be 11 a.m. I believe, and you're welcome to come and see me, Rich Condit, and Jason McClellan. So if you're in Austin and Neva, I know you're not too far away. You might want to come. Mike and Lori are in Seattle. Mitz 76 is in Canada. And MN says Despommier rolls off the tongue pretty nicely. What do you think about that, Dickson?
I like the concept. As long as I'm not rolling off the table, that's all I care about.
Maureen is from Northeast Ohio. Robert is, um, I'm not sure where Robert is from. He didn't say there. Sorry. I do know someone who speaks fluent Russian. Well, tell them that I'm looking for someone to translate the lectures. I will give them an English transcript and they just can read it, and then I will insert it into the slides. Okay. Oh, I see. Michael says, since a few years ago, it's only Ciudad de Mexico. No more DF. Sorry. I'm very sorry if I insulted you. I just remember when I went there, it used to be DF. But now it's Ciudad de Mexico, Mexico City. Okay. Thank you very much. Ripe de Camp is from Taos, New Mexico. Okay. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. If you're new to this, Veronica says you could translate the lectures. Yes, I'm interested. I want someone to do it. I can. We will pay you, and please email me, Vincent@microbe.tv, and we can talk about the details. The most important of which is getting you money, which is not trivial, I know, but we can work it out. And Vincent@microbe.tv, Veronica, Veronica, thank you very much. All right, Dickson, how is the book going? Selling?
I mean, I don't get any updates on that whatsoever, as you would know if you had published a book, and you do. You have published a book.
Speaking of the book, here it is, The New
Yeah,
City.
right. Thank you for the plug. Appreciate it. Every time you do that, the numbers on Amazon go down, and by going down, that's a good thing, not up.
The
They go down.
numbers. In other words, the most. Yeah, the down is better.
There's-
Good.
The
Anyway, this is
plates.
a wonderful book. Look, it's not very thick,
Nope.
and it talks about 4 ways that we have to improve our cities, and
Right.
it's divided into the pillars of change. Right, Dixon, basically.
Yes. Yes.
Pillar 1 is carbon storage. Pillar 2 is urban agriculture. Pillar 3, harvesting water from the air, and Pillar 4, renewable energy.
Right.
Dixon, indoor farming.
Yep.
Has that come of age?
I well, it's coming of age. Let's put it this way: it's having growing pains. It's like any new industry that starts with a bang and ends not with a whimper, hopefully. This industry started from scratch in 2011. So 2011 to 2024,
Hmm.
that's only what, 13 years. And for an industry that's an industry, that it's a remarkably short time to realize how far it has come. It had a lot of history going for it, a lot of greenhouse activity, a
Hmm.
lot of indoor growing skills were already known, but how to cobble them on top of each other to make them into tall buildings, that all had to be invented. And so some people failed and some people succeeded, even in the very beginning. And but right now it's reorganizing, and apparently, I get a newsletter that's produced almost every day now called Vertical Farm Daily. And the latest that I've received from that information is that most of the large purveyors of fresh fruits and vegetables that are, you would call them grocery complexes or supermercados, as they would say in the Spanish world.
Mm.
I don't know how to say that in Russian, but there's a word for that as well. Um, they are thinking about forming their own vertical farm companies
Hmm.
to have a constant supply of produce, which is a great idea, actually. And it could happen over the next 3 or 4 years. The technologies are all there, and all that's missing are the business plans. And so I think we're going to see. I know there's already some interest from Kruger, which is a West Coast food company, and Whole Foods, which has done a lot of business with
Mm.
independent vertical farmers. But I think from now on, you might see Whole Foods vertical farm, or you might see Acme vertical farm, or you might see Shop and Stop vertical farm, and that's the natural progression of this idea to a one that's totally sustainable. And I'm a big supporter of that, as you know, and I'm glad
Yeah. We
that
used
this
to
is
have
all
a
happening.
we used to have a podcast called Urban Agriculture where we
We did, we did.
interviewed people who were movers and shakers in the field, right?
Yeah, well, they got mostly moved,
And,
and they're still shaking on that event.
well, early young businesses will shake out, right?
That's true. They're absolutely right. So there's this wonderful film. I think it was by Mel Brooks, and I forget the name of the movie, but the company at the bad guy in the company was called Engulf and Devour. They were a law firm.
Is that like
And
Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe?
that's exactly the same. Exactly the same. So you've got this tempting, low-hanging fruit, no pun intended,
Hmm.
of a sustainable food supply, and a lot of people made grabs for it. Some people caught the brass ring, but most people missed. And so now you're getting a regrouping. So you've got a growth industry, and then you've got a failure of the early ones, and then a
Right.
reconsolidation. We're in that point now, right now, but it's not going to go away. It's not going to go
So
away.
there is
It'll
a
just
Whole
keep growing.
Foods down the street, and I shop there for lunch here at the incubator.
Yeah,
And I buy leafy greens from, guess where? Gotham Greens.
Gotham Greens.
Because
That's
they're
right.
on the roof of a Whole Foods in Brooklyn, right?
They are. That's exactly right.
And that was our last interview that we did for Urban Agriculture, which was very good.
That's right. And do you remember what the problem was? The
Ma,
problem
tell me.
the problem was that we would try to make an appointment with somebody and they would agree and then they would just back out of it. They
Oh,
never
well.
they never followed through. So maybe it'll change.
Mike says Kroger is the
Kroger.
grocery company. Kruger is a gun company.
Okay, that's your no, we're definitely not making bullets.
They'll make a gun company. Okay. Now, I just have one question more about indoor farming.
Yeah,
What what can't you grow indoors? You can't grow acres of wheat, right?
that's not true.
Really?
No, no, no. There's no plant that you can't grow. But I wouldn't choose to grow trees indoors
Okay.
because trees they do two things. They produce whatever crop you're interested in, like almonds or peaches or pears or apples, but they also sequester carbon
Hmm.
as the tree itself grows.
Right.
So I think
Right.
I don't want to discourage that process.
Right.
But there's nothing you can't grow indoors. I mean, it's all been grown indoors, but the profitability aspect is the hook.
Hmm.
And that's what people balk at when they know they can't make a lot of money. But that having been said, there's a company in the north of England associated with the Jones Food Company, but not directly. The Jones Food Company is the world's largest single indoor grower. So they produce hundreds of thousands of metric tons of whatever per year. And this grower that's associated with that company has set out to grow wheat. And
Hmm.
they think they can make it profitable. So the
Wow.
answer is even wheat is not off the table, so to speak. And again, you use dining analogies to talk about things, but in this case, putting wheat on the table would be the best thing we could possibly do.
I mean, in my view, the fact that you can make a new crop every 21 days is amazing, right?
Yeah, that's right. And
And
that
you could
doesn't
do
wheat.
all year round, all year round.
You're right. Wheat doesn't grow that fast. You could produce a crop of wheat every 3 months,
Okay.
but
You
if you
could do
did it
four
continuously,
crops a year. That's more than you could get on land.
exactly right. But if you did it continuously, the yield goes up even higher. In other words, if you had a rolling platform in which you could sow it constantly, and at the other end, who knows
Right.
how far away that is, harvest,
Uh,
then you could have wheat all year round.
so Les says the Mel Dixon the Mel Brooks movie is a silent movie, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. That's the one. Engulf
Silent
and
movie.
devour. That's right. Thank you. We have our own Google out there. I love that.
Well, we have a crowdsourced
That's great.
podcast
Yeah.
here. So, folks, below the video window there, whatever you're looking at, there's a like button. Just hit it. It doesn't cost you anything, and it might help attract more people to the stream, um, so that more people can get real facts, not fake
From
news
real people.
from real people. you know, even fake news purveyors are real people, but they don't
Uh,
purvey the right thing. Okay, John here says, I'm at TWIP 100 in my journey. I
oh,
think
great.
he's listening to TWIP from the beginning. I
Oh,
think I'm close to
fantastic.
the change from audio only ones. I also know I shouldn't feel guilty for not listening to the other great shows yet, but I'll get to TWIM next. No, don't feel guilty at all if you're going to go through all of them. We made a switch to video just the same as all the other shows when the pandemic hit.
Right.
Um, so we had a different way of recording only audio before the pandemic, and it depended on me being in my Columbia office where I had 4 computers, each running a copy of Skype, and I would take all of those and put them together. And when a pandemic came, I had to stay home, and I didn't have 4 computers at home, and so I turned to Zoom, and that had video, and boom, here we are. No more Zoom, but video is here to stay, except for TWIM. TWIM
Really.
does not have video.
Oh.
Yeah, the
You mean they're too
participants,
small to photograph?
the microbes are too small to photograph. Um, the hosts don't want it. It's fine.
I'll be
Okay,
darned.
so John, good luck, and you'll find a lot of gems in those podcasts. Yeah.
Yeah, if you run across questions, send them on to me. I'll be glad to help you answer them.
Mm. So Les says, "We wish we had a microbe TV film group." So, and then I said, "Well, we could do a live stream." He said, "Well, maybe we should just do it on the Discord server." So,
Hmm.
I could run a summary of a film here on a live stream, and then the discussion could move to Discord also.
Ah,
That's fun because there are a lot of interesting science movies that should be um, talked about for sure. Talked about for sure. And
right.
of course, in my course, and Les says, if Professor Vincent mentions any new material, I would love to hear about it.
Hmm.
There's always a little bit of new stuff.
Right.
And I'm teaching now. I did lecture 7 today, which was transcription.
Ah,
I told some jokes at the beginning of the class.
really?
I might include those in the recording.
Did I sent you 2 cartoons on that level, didn't I?
No, I didn't send them. Please, I'd like them. Dixon, I have a joke for you. What is the name? I'm not a good deliverer.
That's all right. It was funny anyway.
What's the name of an American bee?
An American bee. What is the name of an American bee? Um, many ideas come to my mind, but none of them are correct, I presume. So, what is the name of an American bee?
Oh, a USB.
Oh, oh,
Privyet.
ouch.
Hey, very Nika. Privyet. Privyet. It's another word. Das
Right.
Vidanya and Privyet. Anyway, what do you call an American bee? A USB.
A USB. Oh, brother.
Isn't that funny? I
It's
told
not
a
bad. It's
couple
not
of
bad.
jokes at the
No, it's
beginning
not
of,
bad. It's not bad.
and they kind of laughed because
They
they have
were
to.
being gratuitous.
Being gratuitous. You're
You've
being
got them where
gratuitous.
they want. You've got them where you want them because they can't offend you. Otherwise, their grade might go down, which isn't true. They think that that would happen, but that's not true. If you
Mm,
tell a bad joke, they don't really care. My worst joke I ever told in class was at NYU when I used to lecture down there once a year. One year it fell on Halloween.
mm.
So I said, what do ghosts have inside of their red cells? Come on, Vincent, you know the answer.
What do ghosts have inside of their red cells?
Yep.
Oh, What do ghosts? Nothing.
They have hemoglobin.
Okay. Okay. Right.
Arg. Yeah, and they laughed. Um, a couple of moans, a couple of groans, which is what is expected. But
Hmm.
no one can top Alan Dove, so I don't even try to do that. And his are not the kind of belly laughs that you
Oh,
would expect, but
yeah.
they're clever and they're wonderful juxtapositions of words and meanings. And he gets a little convoluted every now and then, but mostly he's much
Hmm.
appreciated by us. We've kind of stopped doing that because it takes away from the seriousness of the content of what we were just talking about. So sometimes you miss the point of what we said if you laugh too hard at Alan's puns.
So Veronica thought it was freebie is the answer, right? So I said, "What's an American bee?" A freebie because
Really.
America, freedom. Yeah, right.
That's of course, of course, of
And
course. Not a bad, not bad.
yeah, freebie. And these are and MN calls them dad jokes. What is a dad joke? Is that like a corny joke?
A dad joke is a yeah. It's well worn. Everybody's heard them 8 times, and they tell them every Thanksgiving or Christmas and
I see.
or Hanukkah, and everybody groans, but they pay tribute, I guess.
Hmm.
I used to tell some to my kids, but
There's another joke, another dad joke I saw today. Do you want to hear it?
absolutely.
Uh, let me see if I can pull it up. What do you call a snake that's exactly 3.14 meters long?
Flat. A pie. I don't know. Pie.
A python. A
A
python.
python. Oh, a python. That's clever. That's very
Is
clever.
that a dad
So
joke?
that's no. Well, that's a little bit of a dad joke. It's a child's joke. So I'm sitting next to a scientist who worked at the Bronx Botanical Garden, and he was an ethnobotanist, still is, I'm presuming. And
Mm.
he had this cute as hell little kid for a son. He was about maybe 8 years old, and the kid wanted to sit next to me. I don't know why, but he did. And I said, "You can't sit next to me until you answer some questions." And so he looks at me like I'm like from Mars. So I said, "Okay, my first question is, why do ducks fly south in the winter?" And he looks at me like, "What? This man's crazy. Why do ducks fly south in the winter?" And the answer is, "Would you like to hear the answer?" And he says, "Yes." And I said, "Because it's too far to walk."
That's horrible.
It's a dad joke. It's a dad joke. Get
It's
it?
not even
Okay. So
funny. It's not even funny though. At least
the second,
Python was funny.
no, that's clever. I think Python was clever. This
USB is clever also, right?
that's a good use of yeah,
Yeah.
concepts. But I told him three other jokes like similar to that, and
Hmm.
he somehow he got one of them right. And I said, "Okay, good, sit next to me."
All right.
Kid was a font of knowledge. I mean, he picked up everything his father was ever talking about at home, and we had a wonderful conversation. I don't know what happened to him, but I presume he's the head of some department somewhere.
All right. Vanity Nutrition just texted me a joke. Okay.
Uh-oh.
What? Why don't ants get sick, Dickson?
Who said they don't?
Just answer the question.
Okay, I don't know.
Because they have antibodies. Vroom. I'm
Ba-dum-bum.
hero week. Try the veal.
Yeah, we've done that before. Yeah. Well, if you were in class and you told that joke, they would laugh.
John says the litmus test for a dad joke is the length of the groaning after.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's exactly right.
All right. Alina, who is from Coxsackie, New York, says, "What does a fish say when it hits a wall?"
Go ahead.
Damn. Ooh, that's a tough one.
Right.
So we have what do you?
Hmm.
So Les says, "What do you call a snake that eats comedians?" I see his answer. Monty Python.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear.
All right.
But the worst joke I ever told, but the one that got the most appreciation, which was right off the top of my head. We were at a dinner somewhere at a biological station. So it is, and who owns the cloisters? You know,
I don't know.
I've been to New York. I've been to all of your museums, but I've never been to the cloisters. Who owns that? And I said it's owned by the Rockefeller family.
Hmm.
They said it is. I said, yeah, it's also known as the Cloisters Rockefeller.
That's a
And they liked
terrible
it.
joke.
They
That's a
actually
dad
liked.
joke.
They liked. No, that was a good one. That was pretty good. I was very, very proud of that one.
All right. So we actually are going to be serious tonight. Although this is a good thing to let people relax, right?
This is true.
We actually have a question here from Kang for you, Dixon. Can the
Uh-oh.
term infection be used to describe a host afflicted with a metazoan, ecto, or endoparasite? Can it also be applied to commensal or symbiotic organisms living on or in the host?
If they're symbiotic, that the word symbiosis is a general term, and it just means living together. It doesn't specify what the nature of the relationship is.
Hmm.
All right. So we have other terms for that. We have parasitism, we have mutualism, we have commensalism. Those terms imply who's doing what to whom. And so an infection is something that your body doesn't ordinarily encounter. Or if they do, they have an immune system which gets rid of it. So an infection could not possibly be initiated by an organism whose relationship with the host was one of mutual help. I give you something, you give me something, like
Hmm.
a fungus and an algae, for instance, and things like that. So it's complicated though because there are many relationships which can be many different kinds of those symbiotic relationships. They can be mutualistic at times, they can be um, parasitic at times. And with regards to coral reefs, for instance, which is one of my favorite living objects, the coral reef is the natural color of a coral reef is kind of a pea soup green. And the green color for years was baffling scientists as to why that why was that so? Because when you break off a piece of coral and you take it back on land and then you throw it into a bottle of bleach, for instance, it comes out pristine and white and beautiful, just like we imagine them. But their real color is pea soup green. So the pea soup green is actually due to an algae that lives, a zooalgae that lives inside the cytoplasm of the coral organism, the polyp, that forms a portion of the coral reef.
A
And
holobiont.
yeah, so though, as long as the sun shines and as long as the temperature of the ocean is of a certain temperature, and I won't say which
Hmm.
it is because it varies, that relationship holds. But the moment things change, the coral organism, the polyp, digests the algae
Right.
and gets rid of it, and then it bleaches. And it has to reacquire the algae in order for it to resume its normal life. So that's an example of a symbiotic relationship that's only present during optimal environmental conditions. And we worry a lot about stuff like that because animals and plants have been associated with each other since there were animals and plants,
But
which goes back a long time ago,
but
right?
are these infections, Dixon?
Probably they all started as infections.
And you would
You know,
call them,
even I remember Lynn Margulis.
yeah.
She taught up at the University of Massachusetts, and she was very interested in the concept of symbiosis,
Hmm.
as was William Traeger, who I studied with at Rockefeller. And we actually hosted her once for a full day. It was quite enjoyable to hear her expound about the possibilities of how life got to be the way it is. And one of the concepts was how did a cell develop a nucleus? And how did a cell develop mitochondria? Now, mitochondria may have started as microbes.
Yeah, they were
They have their own
bacteria that
genome.
invaded for sure. Yeah.
That is, and they've got separate protein synthesis mechanisms.
Have
But
separate
they
genomes too. Yeah.
and they live compatibly,
Yep.
but not. Um, totally dependent. They are totally dependent on their host cell. I don't think they can be grown outside. I think
No,
they've
no,
lost that
no, can't.
ability.
No, they can't grow outside. They'll
And
have.
and without them, we would be anaerobes.
We'd be toast.
We would be toast.
No energy.
That's right.
Well, there are many diseases of mitochondria which are very bad.
There are. That's
Right.
right. That is true.
Okay, so that's Kang. Let's see the.
Complicated answer. Sorry about that, but
It's all right,
yes,
Dickson. We don't mind.
you asked a multi-level question.
So, if you have if you have trichinella,
Yeah.
that can go on for many years, right?
Yep.
So, is it always an infection?
Yeah, it doesn't belong there basically, and it has mechanisms for coping with regards to your attempt to get rid of it. So it can immuno inhibit normal cellular and humoral immune responses to keep it out of its nurse cell. And
Yeah.
the nurse cell is the gold standard for this organism's ability to survive inside. It's quite a remarkable structure that the nuance of it has yet to be fully appreciated.
Well, we actually have a question about that, Dixon. What is known about trichinella's nervous system? Does it guide the
All
worm
right.
to the muscle cell? Also, inside the nurse cell, is the worm active and react to stimuli?
Right. That's a wonderful question. The number one is a nematode. So all nematodes have nervous systems, and Trichinella is no exception.
Mm.
They have a centralized core of cells called a nerve ring. It's at the anterior end of the worm, and from it, commissures grow out, and they grow both forward and backward. And
Hmm.
the ones that grow backward go the entire length of the worm, and they end in sensory organelles that actually exist above the level of the cuticle so that the worm can sense where it is. The same is true in the front. So those are the ones in the front are called phasmids, and the ones in the back are called amphids. Now, someone's going to call me and says you got them reversed. Actually, they were the other way, but they've got two groups of sensory organelles all connected to the nervous system of the worm. But that having been said, the newborn larva does not seek out specifically striated skeletal muscle. And that is the problem of the early onset
Mm.
clinical picture of trichinosis because it doesn't know where it is, but it knows where it wants to go. So in order to find out, it's circulating in the bloodstream and it gets to a capillary and it gets stuck because it's a little bit wider than the capillary. And that's enough to trigger it to try to escape into the tissue and to see where it is. And very often it's not in striated skeletal muscle, although it constitutes 40% of the mass of an animal,
Mm.
minus the bones. So it finds striated skeletal muscle quite frequently, but it also penetrates brain cells and heart muscle and thyroid and all the other tissues that we have. And then once it's there, its nervous system says,
Mhm.
you're really looking for a striated skeletal muscle cell, and you're not even close. You got to go back out and keep looking. And they do. They actually penetrate back out into the capillary, and they get carried to other parts of the body until eventually most of the newborn larvae find their way into a muscle cell. And that's when the excitement starts with regards to reshaping its ecological environment to suit its own needs. And that's what attracted me to that relationship to begin with. I really could not stop thinking, and I still can't stop thinking about how trichinella and its host cell come to an agreement that you can stay in my tissue for, and I'm being anthropomorphic here, but if you imagine these two cells talking to each other, or
Mhm.
two whole organisms basically, it says, look, you can hang around a long time, but you got to do something for me. And what I want you to do is I want you to alert my immune system to ward off any other organisms that might come along and cause an early death for me, because it's in your behalf to make sure that I live a long and rich life so that I'll transport you to some other place so that when I do die and I'm consumed by another animal, the infection can pick up again somewhere else. And that's how you will spread and that's how you will get from one place to the next.
Hmm.
So that's basically the relationship that they've evolved into. But the intermediate parasites that learn how to do that, they're all gone. All we've got now left is 8 different trichinella species that infect different groups of mammals or birds, and not fish, only warm-blooded animals, and are found in various places throughout the world. And so it's quite a wonderful little group of animals to study, and I had a lot of fun doing that.
All right. Robert writes, I am an MLT student
Hmm.
pursuing my bachelor's in medical laboratory scientist. So
Aha.
MLT is medical lab technology, I
Okay, fine.
guess. And medical lab science is very interested in virology. Do you think I would be able to find a career in the field as a laboratory scientist? So I mean, like a clinical virology lab, right? That's what
Hmm.
Robert is talking about. Certainly there are, but you're only going to find them in the biggest hospitals, right? Like Columbia has a virology clinical lab, right?
That's right. Yep.
But you're not going to find it in small hospitals. Um, they would just send their materials to a bigger hospital. So yeah, you can find jobs in New York City. All the big hospitals have clinical virology labs. I went and visited the one at Columbia. Very interesting lady running it, whose daughter took my virology course one year. He was a Columbia student.
Cool.
Yeah, it's cool. And other big cities with big hospitals would have them. So yeah, you can do that. So there's a fella, Ryan Relic, in Indiana. I know Indiana is not really, but Ryan is great. He's a clinical microbiologist, but he specializes in virology. He does a lot of different things. He does parasites and bacteria, but he specializes in virology. And you would like to talk to him. He could give you a lot of advice. He was on a TWIV last year from the medical technology meeting that was in Atlanta. You know, there's a clinical lab meeting, and he was on it, and he he would you would love to talk to him. So if you want to, send me an email, vincent@microbe.tv, and I can hook you two up, and he can give you some good advice. All right. A lot of
Right.
other people can as well, but he comes to mind.
There are other opportunities too associated with the government, and we have national laboratories for veterinary medicine as well as human medicine,
Hmm.
and they're associated in various places. One of them is in, I believe it's in Colorado Springs, and the other one is in Iowa. And that's the veterinary
Hmm.
virology lab, and that's where West Nile virus was first identified outside of the case that Ian Lipkin had in California. And the laboratory in Iowa, which was run by veterinarians, got in touch with the animal laboratory in Boulder and in Colorado Springs and said, "We have some samples here which we think might be a different flavivirus than the one we thought it was, which was uh, hmm,
St. Louis.
luck. Yeah, that's right, St. Louis and syphilis. So then they said, "Well, send it to us and we'll help you." And then it was this long pause at the end of the telephone. And said, "Well, we'd rather actually complete the analysis here." And
Hmm.
they said, "This is too important to allow a regional laboratory of your." And they gave them on, and then Wayne Gubler was the guy who did that. And they actually ended up sending the samples to Colorado Springs, and they eventually finished the sequence. And it matched identically with the one that Ian Lipkin had already uh,
Yep.
done. But clinical laboratories for virology or zoos have a huge responsibility for these because a lot of animals have latent viruses and they get sick and then they
Yeah,
die, and
sure. Of
we'd
course.
love to know why. We don't want it. So that
Yeah,
sort of
so,
thing.
so Robert, you can do it for sure. No
Yeah,
question.
absolutely. Absolutely.
By the way, if you want to support us, there are a couple of ways you can do that. Um, we'd love your support because we do all these programs without charging. There's no ads. There's
I don't get paid
nothing.
for this?
You don't get paid for it, and
Oh,
we'd
come
love your
on.
support to help maintain this wonderful studio and to all the associated expenses with producing 9 podcasts, so forth. Anyway, you can go to there's a button right below the window there you could give with, but Google takes a big cut. So if you'd rather try other things, go to Venmo at Microbe TV or microbe.tv/contribute. We'd appreciate your support. Doesn't have to be a huge amount. $500,000. It's okay. I'm kidding. Just $1 a month would be great.
Oh, he's not kidding. Don't say you're kidding.
Oh,
Someone who's got that kind of money, we'll take it.
well, if they probably want to give it
And put it
somewhere
to good
else.
use, we should say.
Well, I think we're putting our money that we get from you, our listeners. Many of you are donors, as you know, and I completely appreciate your support. I mean, it's just amazing when we get your money, but it's put to good use here. For the first time, I have people here at the incubator working and helping. I mean, just the administration of a nonprofit is a lot of work, and
This is true.
we have to do that. We have to pay taxes. We have to track our income and output, but also there are costs associated with producing. Like this software I use for this, it costs $250 a year, right? So, but anyway, we'd love your support, and if you don't want to do that, that's fine. Just press the like button below the video. John has a question for Dickson. What is the most lethal parasite, and what parasite is the most prevalent or does the most damage from being widespread?
It depends on how you define parasite, but if you include viruses, then I would definitely opt for rabies as the world's most lethal parasite. And it's distributed, of course, as you know, by animals that catch it and then they run loose and bite other people and bite themselves, and they essentially they go crazy and then they die. Um, that's very widespread, and in fact, rabies is responsible in Africa for the near extinction of the wild African dog, which catches it by mingling briefly with domestic dogs. And the virus jumps from domestic to wild animals. And then once it gets into the ecosystem, it's very difficult to eradicate. You agree, Vincent?
On what?
Is that the most lethal
rabies.
virus?
Yeah, over 99.9%
Right.
if you're not vaccinated, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
But the most prevalent would be...
Oh, prevalent. Oh, that's different.
That's different. What you know what the most prevalent parasite would be?
Well, I would either pick pinworm, which is really, under strictest conditions, is not considered to be a parasite. Its main food is human feces, so I don't think we could ever try to explain that we miss that because the pinworm is taking it away from us. But they do cause irritations in the perianal region when they come out to lay their eggs, and the patients do experience urticaria and various other conditions of that sort. So that's the most prevalent multicellular organism that we can think of that infects humans. The other one, surprisingly enough, is a mite. It's called Demodex follicularum, and it lives in the little pores in your eyelashes, and its job is to keep those eyelashes clean so that you don't develop styes. And the moment the mite dies, the probability that you will develop a sty where the mite used to live is rather high. And to know that we have an obligatory symbiont that prevents
That's amazing.
a microbial infection, it is amazing. It's
well,
truly
we
amazing.
have all kinds of examples, but so I have these in my eyelashes. Is that right?
You do. You do. You do.
Well, we have bacteria, commensal bacteria in us.
Oh,
of
yeah,
course.
lots of them.
We even have them on our skin, and they produce antimicrobial peptides that block pathogenic bacteria and even viruses. So,
yes,
we have an incredible ecology. Not just humans, but all animals have an incredible ecology, right?
Somebody estimated, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I would be willing to believe it, that we have more foreign DNA on us and in us than we do our own DNA.
That may be. I don't know. We have a lot of cells in us, so that'd be hard.
But you think of all the
let's look it
retroviruses that have left a little piece of them in our genome. That's not us, that's them. So how has everybody got that?
Everybody, meaning all the animals.
Yeah, including humans. Is
Yeah.
anybody alive that doesn't have a remnant of a
I don't
retrovirus?
think that any have been found. No.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's hard to compare the DNA of bacteria in humans because our genome is so much bigger, right?
No, I was talking about viruses, not bacteria.
So what was your question?
Don't we have remnants of prior infections with retroviruses
In all
that have
living things.
that had that's right, but
Yeah, pretty much every living thing has it. Yeah.
it didn't belong there though, right?
What do you mean it didn't belong?
It wasn't part of the genome of the animal. It was part of the
Well,
genome of the virus. That's what I
yeah,
meant.
there must have been a time when cells didn't have these.
Maybe. But what is it good for now? Do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, we have taken some of the genes of those retroviruses and used them.
Good for us.
So
It's about time. We turn the tables.
there's a placental protein called syncytin, and
I remember that you told me
that's an ancient retroviral envelope protein
that.
that
Okay.
has been
Okay.
taken or exapted. The word is exapted.
Exactly.
EXAPED. When you take an organism takes a gene from another organism and uses it as their own. So the placenta, and there are other examples. There are all kinds of regulatory elements in our genome that come from retroviruses, and many more to be discovered as people just look for them. It's really fascinating. Yeah, really
So
fascinating.
we are a composite of living organisms.
Totally composite. We are a mishmash. We are just
We're a mishmash. We're
a
mutts.
mosaic. A mosaic. Anyway, toxoplasma is also quite prevalent, right?
That's probably the most prevalent protist among people. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. I
Okay.
would agree.
Now we have a question from Rima. What attracted you to parasites?
Oh,
That's a
brother.
funny way to put it, isn't it?
No,
Attracted you.
well, no, they do have an attraction. Just their lifestyle alone is. I never knew that there were parasites before I took a course in it, of course, which was in my undergraduate days. But I later became associated with a diagnostic lab,
Hmm.
and this diagnostic lab was an open door to the world of parasites. And people came in, some of them with their own microscopes, with their own stool samples, and they wanted you to help them find the parasites that they knew they had. And this is an obviously a psychiatric condition called parasitophobia, and there were no parasites, of course. I got stuck because I was a newbie to stick in the corner with this person with their microscope and help them search their stool exam for a dog tapeworm that they swear they had, and they drew pictures of it, and they knew what it was, and they knew how it was transmitted. I said, but you're not a dog, so how can you have a dog parasite? Well, this parasite mistakes me for a dog. I said, well, okay, that's fair enough. Then just show me the parasite, and I'll be glad to verify it for you, because I know exactly what dog tapeworms look like. I actually have a slide of one right here. So I would put my slide from our slide collection under the microscope as a comparison. I said, if you find something that looks like this, then you're right.
Hmm.
And then we have a drug for this. In those days, we had drugs that attacked the adult
Oh,
worms
sorry.
that didn't. But it was such a fascinating subject. People, and then they would devote their lives to studying malaria, or they would devote
Hmm.
their whole life to studying some little worm. And they were fascinated. These people were fascinating to talk with. I went to national meetings as a graduate student, and I became more and more entrenched in the culture of parasitism. And it spread. I mean, look at me now. I mean, I'm not even a virologist, and I'm on one of these early podcasts that Vincent conjured up this week in parasitism, this week in virology, rather. But I enjoy the subject so much that even though I forget a lot of stuff, I'm still fascinated by all of the intricacies that we won't call them organisms, but we'll call them something else, like monkey wrenches into the normal biology of a cell. every one of them finds a different way of taking advantage of it. And it's, I know why Vincent is a virologist. I mean, you never cease to be amazed at the nuance of these pieces of DNA and RNA that manifest themselves at our expense. And I think maybe that's the whole deal. Part of it is I wish this parasite would go away, so I'll devote my life to getting rid of malaria or tuberculosis or something like that. Or I just want to know more about their lives because I find them so
Mm.
fascinating. And so it, you know, it makes you want to speculate that if we do discover life on another planet, there have to be parasites associated with it. So you say, well, why do you say that? I say because parasites do a lot of good as well as a lot of evil, if you want to consider disease as an evil. But if you want to consider controlling the number of things that stay alive on an ecosystem, then parasites are essential for population control for many, many different plants and animals, and including bacteria, that have their own parasites, bacteriophage. So no matter where you look, you find parasites. And so that's the point. Uh, there are probably more parasites than there are any other thing in nature because some organisms like us can harbor hundreds of different kinds of parasites.
Of course, there are also
And
human parasites, right?
yeah, well, we know about some of those. That's right.
Take from others and harm them. So,
Oh, yeah.
Dixon, over the years, have you learned a great deal from TWIV?
I've learned so much from TWIV. I've learned to keep my mouth shut for one thing, because I mean, I used to ask, pretty naive questions and pretty stupid questions. But over the years, I have gained an enormous respect for the subject of virology through you and through the other podcasters, but also through the guests that you've had.
Mm.
I mean, some of those people that have been on our show has been stunning examples of insatiable curiosity. And that's the thing that drives most of us in science, is an insatiable curiosity. We put aside all of the things in our lives that matter to other people, like holidays and marriages and children and things that we wish we could spend more time with, but couldn't because we were driven by our passion for finding out an answer to a question that no one else had answered yet. And that was one of the things that um, kept me, I guess, on red alert every time my grant was up for renewal. I had to sit down and think about, well, what have I done already? And then you have to think about, well, if I've done this, then what needs to be done next? And just going through the process of inventing science and collecting data and analyzing it and reveling in your successes and trying harder to correct the things that you know you did wrong. That's the way the life of a scientist plays out ultimately, but it's such a wonderful way to spend time. And I remember one of our colleagues at Columbia, I'm blocking his name right now, but he was a vitamin B12 expert. He said, doing research is organized play. And I just love that definition.
Wonderful.
It's organized play. It is. It has some rules. And if you follow those rules and if you just keep asking yes or no questions and you get answers to either one of them, you've designed a wonderful experiment and you can go to the next question. And it's just what's around the corner. It isn't the corner that you've been around already. It's fun to relive all the stuff that you've invented and discovered, and but it's even more fun to think about what you could have done if you had worked just a little bit harder or just a little bit longer. And I wonder about that too. But
The,
I can
the,
already redesign an experiment
well, of
that
course.
I conducted at Rockefeller University as a postdoc, and we didn't have an answer for it. And a lot of people heard the question, but no one had the answer for this question. And I think I have the answer for it now, but I'm way beyond my prime, as they would say. And the lab is no longer in existence, and it will take somebody else to answer that question. But I think I know where we didn't make a mistake. We just didn't go far enough. And it bothers me that I know that now, but I wish I'd known it then.
There are parasites of parasites, right, Dickson?
You bet. That's right. It's like speaking of Russian dolls, it's like a Russian doll. The big ones that you open them up and there's another doll inside, and you open that one up and there's another one inside, and you open that one up and you can have a whole
But,
parade
but they're
of
viruses of parasites like Giardia and,
yeah,
and
yeah.
all of those, right?
That's right. That's right.
Um, let's
Good
see here.
stuff.
It's all good stuff. What attracted you to parasites? Okay, that's we got that. There you go. Here's one from Frank who says, "Are you familiar with the report on BBC, more or less behind the stats, where they report a study claiming that homegrown vegetables are worse for climate change than veggies grown on a farm?" You just muted yourself, Dickson. Yeah, you're muted.
No, no, I didn't mean to do that.
Okay, good. Now I hear you.
I don't. I would like to see that experiment carried out in its fullest before I'm willing to accept that data. I don't think that's true. I really don't think so. I wouldn't believe it until I could see a lot of evidence. And I know we have a lot of preliminary evidence for things, but I think that that sounds like it's. I hope it's not false information.
I mean, how could it be
I,
worse for climate change? You mean you're using more resources as a consequence? Is that the idea?
um, no, I don't think so. You
Anyway,
know what?
we'd have to look at this study, right, Dixon?
We would, but I wanted to go back to the other question because I wrote something recently. Um,
Which question? How you got into parasites?
that's right. That's exactly right.
All right, go
Because
ahead.
I wrote an essay for a proposal for a new book that I'm thinking about submitting, and it's based on the shape of an object, and the object's shape is a spiral,
Mm,
which was the shape of the organism that I worked on. So
right.
the proposal is called The Beauty of Spirals, and I you know I've got a lot of collections of spirals, and I've put them together, and whether it's useful or not, or even worthy of a book, I don't know, but that's whatever. So let me just read this middle part though, because it starts off with my love of spirals, like all love affairs, began innocently enough. I was a master's student in a parasitology class at Columbia University's School of Public Health. The instructor introduced us to them through a well organized, hands on experience.
Mm,
As part of the course requirements, we had to replicate their life cycles using mice as the host. As fate would have it, I was assigned to work with Trichinella spiralis. This was like by lottery. You picked it out of a hat, and I got Trichinella spiralis, a nematode, in other words, a roundworm, a parasite barely visible to the naked eye that promiscuously infects nearly every mammalian species on our planet. Its shape as a larva inside its home in the muscle tissue is a spiral, hence its name. Richard Owen, in 1835, then director of the British Museum of Natural History and a fiercely religious, outspoken critic of Darwin's theory of evolution, was the first to observe it under the microscope and named it Trichina spiralis. It turned out that the genera Trichina had already been assigned to a group of tiny insects, so it was up to Alcide Rayleigh in 1895 to create its final binomial Trichinella spiralis. Okay, so which means by little, it means little hair spiral.
mm.
So in class, I isolated larvae from an infected mouse by digesting some of the host's muscle tissue in a warm pepsin solution laced with hydrochloric acid, the kind found in our stomach. The immature worms were resistant to the acidified enzyme as they must be eaten to become effective. Looking at them move, coiling and uncoiling under the microscope sealed the deal. I was drawn in and I never looked back. After giving my mice a small oral dose of the immature worms, I could hardly wait for the infection to reach maturity. That took another 30 days. The infected animals were then sacrificed, and a portion of their muscle tissue was digested, freeing the larvae. And there they were, some 25,000 strong, squirming as if they were looking for a new host to infect. I wanted to earn my PhD and continued my interest in this parasite. For the next 28 years, I researched its biological modus operandi down to the molecular level. supported by research grants from the National Institutes of Health. Now, that's a microscopic view of why I became a parasitologist, but it really did start that way. And that's a true story of how something so innocent as a classroom exercise can stick in your brain and you just can't get it out of your head that this is what you want to do. And that you can't supply a reason for it yet. You haven't found enough material outside to justify the commitment. You just have this, dare I say, gut level feeling that this is the right place for you. And that's how I felt. It was the right place for me. And I didn't abuse the privilege, I hope. Um, I loved teaching the subject. I loved researching the subject. I still like talking about it. And I love to hear that people that have heard something that I've said went on to take up a career in some related field. And I got an email just today from somebody that told me that and was very gracious in his acknowledgement of my input. And I said I had nothing to do with it. I just related what was important to me, and apparently it resonated pretty well with somebody else as well.
All right, Silvio Pina says, I'm about to order Dickson's book, wondering if there will be an Audible, not as a substitute, but as a plus. I listen while I work. Dickson, you should record the Audible version. You have a
No
good
one's ever,
voice.
they haven't asked yet. Well, thank you. I would love to do that, but I don't think they haven't asked me. And I think those are under contract to other people that have and the number of books that they have to do per year to fill that contract up.
Yeah,
But
professionals. But you have your voice has character.
well, it's no, it comes out of a character is what you really meant to say. I would enjoy
And
reading it. You know who read Barack Obama's book?
who?
Barack Obama.
He's a good
He read
reader.
his own book. Read his own book.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
have a
I
book
would.
to read, but if I did, I would like to read it.
You do so. You have come on, fundamentals in virology.
Oh, no, I can't read a virology textbook.
You can try.
Let's see. I'll take a chapter. I'm going to start reading.
Yeah, come on. Let's hear a little bit of it.
All right, let's see how a virology textbook. This is volume 1, right?
Hold it up.
Principles of
That's brand
Virology.
new. That's brand new, right?
Well, no, this is the 5th edition, which is going to be superseded in a couple of years. But let me just take a random bit here and read, okay? You tell me, I have to give it a little character, right?
Absolutely.
Quasi-equivalence, a second cornerstone of the theory developed by Casper and Klug, was the proposition that when a capsid contains more than 60 subunits, each occupies a quasi-equivalent position. That is, the non-covalent bonding properties of subunits in different structural environments are similar, but not identical. Were you riveted to your seat?
I didn't even know that. I mean, I'm fully informed now.
I could read like that
No, that's good. You
for the
have
whole
some
book.
drama. You put a little drama into it, and anything
Well, I
becomes
think you have to.
interesting
When
if
I
you develop it
lecture,
well. Yeah, that's right.
I
I did too.
pause, I
Yeah,
emphasize.
that's right.
I don't
That's right.
just talk
No, no,
continuously, right?
no. That's exactly right.
But I don't have a voice of character. That's the problem.
I wouldn't say that.
It's just a New Jersey voice.
You don't speak like that when you lecture.
I
I know
don't.
you don't.
Anyway, I'm not sure there's a market for reading a textbook, but I have always wanted to write my memoir,
Ah,
and I'm hoping I can do it, and I would read that. That would be fun.
you bet.
Um, okay, so you don't know anything about an Audible book, right?
Not yet. But if you go to Amazon, they will list it when it's available. And I'm not even sure there's a Kindle yet either.
All right. John says NPR News just reported that Minnesota has so much renewable, mostly wind, that the
Yes.
grid has trouble transmitting it. I hope for more investment in transmission infrastructure and or storage.
Storage. John, that's the missing element in all of this is the storage part. A long-term storage battery
Hmm.
that would take energy from, let's say, solar panels uh, that are situated in deserts, and of course you're going to have sunlight almost every day, right? So to take that excess energy and put it into something that you can use for the next 2 weeks in another place that doesn't have that kind of advantage is what's missing most, and the transmitter,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
course.
Yep.
So that's where we're struggling.
Visto says perfecting indoor farming on Earth could have spin-offs for space station, moon, etc.
This is true, but I just read an article in Vertical Farm Daily that suggested that there are some nuances about raising food in space that have some health hazards associated with them. I
Mm.
didn't read the full article because I was interested in something else and I just ran across that. But I'm going to go back and read it in more detail because the online versions are always available. That would be very bad to know. And I think one of the fears is that it would be easy to contaminate the crops with human waste because it's very difficult to handle human waste in space. If you think about weightlessness and the difficulty it would be to urinate or to defecate, uh, and it is, all the astronauts all complain about that part.
Mm.
That's the part that they don't like about being in outer space. They have to think about every nuance of capturing every drop or every piece of whatever they're
Yeah.
getting rid of. And you know what the biggest problem on the space station is? Human skin.
Mm.
It's the debris that they have to clean out like once a month to make sure that all the instruments
Yeah.
don't get jammed up. Who would have guessed? I
No, we
mean,
shed skin all the time, right?
we are a dynamo when it comes to producing more of us. So
Yep.
we have to be very careful about things like that. But handling waste products, they were thinking about, you know, all you'd need is one carrier for salmonella. Of course, they screened for this, but they were worried about contaminating the food supply. That's basically what they were worried about. But
The
you're right.
life. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, I wasn't going to say anything
We
else.
interviewed Kate Rubins, the astronaut, and she's done some experiments trying to grow little plants in the space
Oh,
station.
they do well. They grow very well.
Yeah. Yeah, they do.
Actually, one of the astronauts who spent a long time in space, and I think it was one of the twins, uh, lost a a little tomato that he was growing.
Yeah.
He was gonna eat it, and he levitated it and it disappeared. He
Yeah.
couldn't
Right.
find it. Somebody found it.
Yeah.
This is
Recently,
like 2 years later. They found this piece of rotting material someplace, and that was the
yeah,
tomato.
that was Brienne picked that on Twiv recently.
That's
The
right. So
rediscovery of the tomato, right?
we have to be careful of everything when you're in a closed environment where there's
Yeah,
no
sure.
escape,
Of
and
course.
that's space, unfortunately.
All right. Laura writes, a young man I helped start a business in a container growing microgreens. Now he received a grant from the state of Connecticut and is growing in
Oh yeah,
Bridgeport. Joe
nice,
Alvarez High Ridge Hydroponics.
wonderful,
It's a
good
good
stuff.
story. Yep. El Informante writes, Dickson, why do we throw peels away, stems away? Why do we toss nutritionally dense fibers away?
We were taught to do this by our mothers. I think we follow the recipe. The recipe says peel 3 potatoes. You'll notice that what tastes better. And I'll give you some choices here: a McDonald's French fry, a Wendy's French fry, or the one you make yourself when you don't peel the potato. So the answer turns out to be, of course, the one that you don't peel the potato. You cut it, but you don't take the skin off.
Oh, you make
And
French
and
fries from
and yeah,
potatoes with the
that's
skin.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So I don't. They don't always do it. We don't always do all that stuff. The peels. I think a peel of a banana wouldn't be so appetizing, but it might. And we don't peel a lot of fruit that we eat,
Mm.
right? So I mean,
Well, I
but
think also, Dixon, we compost a lot of that stuff.
Yes, we give it to the microbes. That's
but
exactly right.
it's not easy to do that. You have to
Yeah,
turn the compost periodically, and
that's right.
it's just a pain. I don't really like doing it anymore.
I don't
But
blame you.
on an industrial scale, it's expensive, right?
You're right. You
And
are
getting
right.
people to give all these pieces, it's just a logistical nightmare. It's very hard to do.
That's why it hasn't worked out too well, no matter
Yeah.
when they tried it. That's true. If you got paid for it by the weight,
Hmm.
then it might work. People would save it because they could actually redeem some money back.
Right.
So I think economics has something to do with this one.
Farhad, my black rose. Interesting question. Why do we use placebo in a randomized clinical trial for a common deadly disease? Let's say some kind of cancer. Don't we already know the statistics without that new treatment? Oh, so
Well, we
no,
don't.
you don't. And
We
then
don't know.
any particular trial, you don't know how things are going to turn out. That's the
That's right.
problem. You cannot
That
predict
is
it. So if
exactly.
there's no treatment for something and you're trying a new drug, you have an untreated placebo group for sure.
That's right.
And
But the,
there have always been ethical arguments about that. Jonas Salk did not want a control group when his polio vaccine was being tested in 1953, 54. He thought it was unethical. And they convinced him otherwise. And often what will happen in many trials is if a benefit is shown, then they stop the trial
correct.
and
That's what I was going to
take
say.
take care of the placebo group, right?
That's right. That's right.
But otherwise, you can't figure out if something's working without that.
It removes the objectivity of the experiment.
Now, if you have a drug already, then you have to compare something new to that drug. You cannot take people off of a standard of care, right? So
No,
if you're treating hepatitis C virus with interferon and you have an antiviral, you can't give people just the antiviral. You have to give them both and compare them to a group that gets the interferon. So
exactly.
we're very careful about that, and I think that's good, right?
Yes. So there was this old world. I think you would call him a multifaceted scientist, but he became really well known for his work on parasites. And his last name was Reddy, Redi.
Mm.
And he was the very first person to challenge the spontaneous life hypothesis and did a wonderful demonstration of that using two jars
Hmm.
with two tops that were open, and one of them had gauze over it and one didn't. And then he placed a piece of meat in both jars. And they just waited. And the only jar that had more flies in it was the one that had an open lid with no gauze. And his explanation was quite simple. He says, you keep the flies out, they can't lay their eggs, and therefore they can't give birth to the larvae. Now, no one knew all those terms in those days, so they invented other words for them. But it took all the way out to Louis Pasteur before they finalized okay, 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 life doesn't arise spontaneously, but it was discovered hundreds of years earlier by this guy, Italian,
Mm.
great scientist, who also described ascaris, the eggs of ascaris. Eggs were a very important part of their life cycle. Who knew what an egg was? I mean, I guess we knew what chicken eggs were, but we didn't assume that everybody had eggs. And Reddy was the first one to describe the eggs of this parasite as well. So with a hand lens, he had a hand lens. So having a control is absolutely critical if you're going to remove an opinion about something, whether it's going to work or not. You can have an opinion about it, but you can't alter the experiment.
Yep. And
That's the
and
point.
Nevitz Forever says you need a double-blinded untreated group. So
Double,
neither the
double.
patient nor
That's
the
right.
investigator doing the trial knows
That's right.
the who's getting what. Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
coded.
Yep.
Carol says, my husband and I grow what we eat. Now we have broccoli, cauliflower, lettuce, over 30 fruit trees.
Oh, wow.
Summertime, we have every vegetable you can imagine.
That's
Must be
wonderful.
California, right?
It could be other places, though. Arizona has some
Yeah,
nice
of course.
climate also.
I need a lot
Good
of
stuff.
water there, right?
Well, you need some water, that's for sure.
Dickson, how many gallons does it take to grow one almond?
A lot.
It's
No, I can
amazing,
tell
right?
you. You know what they do? They flood irrigate the trees,
Uh-huh.
and that's horrible. The California almond growers, almonds are not considered one of the essential food groups of humans, by the way. They're a luxury item as far as everyone else is concerned.
Yeah.
Although they do have some good nutritional value. But they flood irrigate an entire orchard. That means the entire root system is underwater,
Yeah.
and that's too excessive. So during periods of drought, which is not now, they had to sacrifice a lot of the almond orchards because they couldn't afford the water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a luxury. They're
I think
good.
so, but
Have
they're
have a bag of
excellent.
almonds here, and I feel very guilty every time I eat one.
Well, don't go that far, I don't think, but
I mean, I
I,
go into Whole Foods and there's a shelf with, 20 bags of almonds. I feel very bad about that, but
well,
maybe I shouldn't, buy them. I don't know. Andrew says, I wonder what happens to the land that is freed up by indoor farms. Is it rewilded or
ah,
more residential?
let's talk about that. So I think in the very beginning, and we're dealing with the very beginning right now. Any abandoned farm land was not abandoned because someone discovered how to do indoor farming instead, and just left the farm so they could go off into Minneapolis or someplace like that and start a vertical farm. So I don't think we have any evidence yet as to how many acres of outdoor farms have been replaced with the acreage of indoor farms that currently exist. And I would like to know the number of that as well. I think we know how many indoor farms there are basically. And so we could do some rough calculation to find out how much land we'd be saving by doing it this way rather than the other way. But ultimately, as the climate continues to get worse before it gets better, and that's a given, I don't think anybody doubts the fact now that last year was the hottest year on record. And someone said, remember that year because that may turn out to be the coldest year of your life if you were just born. And that's a depressing thought because that means that every year after that it's going to get warmer and warmer and warmer. Now, that determines where you can grow things, right? So, abandoning a farm for that reason means that what will replace it at that point will be heat tolerant growth that has nothing to do with what the land was originally, that was the trees were chopped down to make room for the corn, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think we can yet make an accurate calculation as to how much land indoor farming has saved. But I think in the long run, as the temperature increases and as the land becomes less fertile or less farmable, then eventually, if that has an effect on the climate to make it turn around or slow down so that normal ecosystem functions can return to those areas that have been encroached by farming, then we'll have a much better idea of what's going on. And that could take as little as 100 years from now, maybe 150 years from now. I'm afraid I will be
You'll
mingling my molecules with the universe at that point.
be
But
recycled.
I will maybe I'll just come back as an ear of corn or some wheat or something like that. I don't know. I
You
don't
won't be
know. Apple
sentient
trees.
then. You're not going to be sentient, though.
No, no, I won't be sentient. My last name is Apple Tree, so maybe I should come back as an apple tree.
So Alina's from Coxsackie, New York, which I love. Should be capital C, right?
It's
Capital
true.
C.
That's
But I
true.
mentioned you. I didn't mention you by name, but I said I have a listener from Coxsackie, New York. When I talked about Coxsackie virus,
Right.
we don't name viruses after places anymore. People don't like that.
No. I've had Coxsackie virus. It's not a nice infection to get. It's put me
It's
in
not
bed for.
only from Coxsackie, New York, by the way.
Oh, I
We
know
get
that.
that
I know
many.
that. It was diagnosed as Coxsackie virus.
Cool, cool. I mean, not cool for you, but I think that's
Well,
interesting.
yeah.
Questella said, I tried to grow food, but I got nothing. Sorry.
No, I hear you. A lot of people can't grow it, but they can certainly eat it, and some people can grow it for others to eat. And so not everybody can be a farmer.
So
Don't
Laura says we haven't even started to breed crop plants to grow inside or even selected to grow in shade.
You don't have to.
No?
No, the plants that grow inside are under the same conditions that they would be outside, except that they are shielded from pests and they are exposed to wavelengths of light that favor the
Hmm.
maximum growth. So they are pampered plants basically. Shade tolerant plants are harder to reconcile, and we need to develop them because there is a technology that's currently being employed of placing solar panels in very large arrays outside of cities to generate energy. And you can actually grow things under them if you could get a plant to adapt to a shaded environment.
Hmm. Let's see. I have to follow. I have to finish Questella's story. She says, groundhogs got mine. I gave up. Even the stuff they didn't get to didn't grow at all. Plants stayed exactly the same height from May till August. The only thing I didn't kill was dill.
Oh dear! Listen, 1 out of 100 isn't bad, but you can do better than that, I'm
That's
sure.
very funny.
People go to school to learn how to do this, so don't feel so bad.
Tom Hardy says, Dixon, there are bunches of abandoned malls all around America, many thousands I read a while back. Wouldn't it be cool if some were retrofitted to grow food on every floor?
I would love it. I would love it. And not that it hasn't happened, but you're absolutely right. It would be very cool.
Risto wants to know your views on nuclear power, not exactly renewable, but drop in replacement for coal power.
It's a temporary fix for the ultimate source of power. And I believe this is true, by the way, and a lot of other people do as well. I didn't make it up. I actually read this somewhere, and I've been reading that literature ever since. I think the hydrogen fuel cell is the ultimate way of generating power on this planet. And the reason for that is that it takes water, splits it into two
Mm.
pieces, and ejects the oxygen and keeps the hydrogen, and then brings the hydrogen back together with more oxygen later on to generate the energy of the heat that's generated when you do that. So, in the meantime, however, we will be dependent upon fossil fuels until it
Mm.
is very, very apparent that we shouldn't be doing that anymore. But I've read recently that they're developing small nuclear reactor power plants. In other words, you could have one for your home.
Oh, great. More nuclear waste.
How would you like that?
No,
Yeah.
I think people are bad enough with their own waste.
Well, you have to talk about waste then. We don't know what to do with the waste we've got now from the nuclear power
Yeah,
plants
this
that
is a
we've got.
problem.
We've tried to get rid of it, and nobody wants it.
No, I think personal nuclear reactors not a good idea. Dixon,
Well,
what do you think
that's
about having a battery running your house, like Tesla's making house batteries?
I'm not against that as long as I have a way of recharging it. And I think that's where the solar panels go, or wind,
Yeah,
a combination of wind and solar. But I just got back from a 4 day jaunt out to Iceland, where everybody there gets all their power from geothermal. And of course, they're very close to the magma sources, so they don't have any trouble digging down 100 feet
yeah.
and uh, and getting hot water from that, basically, which they then use to heat an entire city with. Um, we could use geothermal. I mean, if you dig down to about 1,500 feet, everybody has the same temperature profile at that point, and you could make that the dominant energy resource. But the cost has to come way down for that
It's
to happen.
expensive to drill that deeply, right?
It is, but there are companies now that are trying. The old approach, of course, is to sell as much as you can so that the price per goes down. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that's probably what's going to happen to geothermal. And when it does, then it will become a practical application because you only have to do it once and
Mm.
you've got it for the rest of your life. You don't have no electric bills, no repairs. It has a very small pump that's very, very efficient.
Yeah.
And if you have to replace it, that's
So Nevitt
couple.
Forever says, sure, I can see it now. Waste receptacles, organic, inorganic, recyclables, radioactive. What could possibly go wrong?
go wrong. Remember the ad in the television ad? It was an ad for an airline, as I recall. One of the comedians, stand-up comedians, says, "You get on this airplane and everything is automated. There's no pilot. There's no attendants. There's nothing. You just sit down in your chair, and everything is brought to you by machines, by robots. And you get this announcement that comes over the air and it says, "Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first unmanned flight from New York to London." And in fact, we are so confident that this flight will be successful that we know that nothing could go wrong. Go wrong.
Yeah, yes, of course.
Go wrong.
Yeah, I
You
wouldn't
know,
be on that one. That's for sure.
that's nothing to laugh at anymore. That's the AI world is taking us over. And one of the things that I've been really annoyed with very recently is these fake calls that you get from a recording that can have a conversation with you.
Hmm.
And that's all AI.
I'm an
They say,
AI, Dixon.
they
I've
say,
always been
how?
an AI.
Oh, you're a VC. You're definitely a VC. But
John
you,
says early TWIP introduced me to the concept of the bottom billion. Over a decade later, are they faring better? What would help most now? Trained medical staff, access to medicine, clean water, sanitation. Remember the
all
bottom
of the
billion?
above.
Yeah, all of the above. Sure.
All of the above.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, clean water is number one, but when you do that, you probably have done something else before that because that's still high on the list of a lot of public health facilities throughout the world is
Mm.
to ensure clean water supply. And I was amazed, for instance, in my travels, I once got up to a place called Thunder Bay. It's on Lake Superior. And I stayed at a hotel overnight because I was traveling the Trans Canada Highway back home from Alberta. I went trout fishing. So the guy at the desk says, "Welcome to," and he told me the name of the hotel. He says, "I have to warn you ahead of time that you shouldn't drink the house water." And I said, I turned around and I looked out the window, and there was Lake Superior. I said, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "That's Lake Superior. You couldn't drink that thing dry in 100,000 years if you tried." I said, "What's the problem?" He says, "Well, we get half of our water from there.
Mm-hmm.
We're not privileged to it. We get our water from a little lake up on the mountain." And then he turns around and says, "It's right in back of us." He says, "And there's this guy that we've hired to go into that lake every spring and to shoot all the beavers." I said, "What are you doing that for?" He says, "Well, in that way, you won't catch beaver fever." That's a euphemism for giardiasis.
Mm. Had nothing
And
to
he
do with
says,
beavers.
he said the guy got sick this spring and he couldn't go up and shoot the beavers. So now there are lots of beavers in the lake. The lake water is contaminated with giardia, and it's in half of this city's water supply.
Mm.
And I thought, this is a real testament to the way technology gets totally perverted
Yeah.
and totally twisted around in a way that has no sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. Why don't they get all their water from Lake Superior? It's a clean body of water. You put the pipe down 25 feet and you can have all the clean drinking water you want. And they didn't do it, of course.
Mm.
No explanation either. Except maybe there's a union for beaver shooters, and this guy was a member of them. And you can't fire me because I've got a lifetime contract.
My laughing hog says I have an Opcom grow wall that we use to grow our lettuce.
Ah,
We
cool.
we pick the leaves instead of the entire plant. Yeah, that's the way to do it. You do the same
No,
thing in a
that's right.
garden. Just pick
You
the
can.
leaves. Yep.
That's true. You can harvest 4 times like that before the plant needs to be replaced. Good stuff.
Yeah. Let's see here. My friend is hiking in Patagonia,
Yeah.
sending me pictures of rivers, hills, and mountains. What parasites should she be looking out for when she returns?
When she returns, or while she's still in Patagonia.
Yeah.
um, well, Giardia is pretty universal, but there's an interesting problem, not in the mountains, but rather in the farmland of Patagonia. You might have noticed that there's a lot of condors You shouldn't be able to see an Andean condor. They're such rare animals, but they're not rare in Patagonia. And you're probably wondering why that is. So I'll just tell you. And that's because of the sheep farming. Now, the, the condors don't, they're not predator animals. They scavenge, they eat dead animals. So what's going on here?
Hmm.
So what they learned was that there's a season for breeding for the sheep, and the sheep usually give birth around the same time each year. And of course, associated with the baby sheep is an afterbirth. And the afterbirth is an extra source of protein that the condors have taken advantage of to see themselves through a very short period of, let's say, the unavailability of carcasses period of the season. So they eat the afterbirths, and that gets them through the spring. And then by the time they get to the summer, then they can start feeding on dead carcasses of animals. And a lot of the sheep don't make it for the first year. They get mauled by pumas or
Hmm.
mountain lions. We're used to saying mountain lions. And not all of them die right away, so they would die, somewhere where the carcass could be found by the condors. So the condors are all over the place. Well, the part that I'm really trying to get to is that sheep is a big business, and there's a parasite that lives in sheep, and in sheep dogs. And I know Vincent knows the name of this parasite because he's a better student of parasitology than I am of virology. So it's a Echinococcus granulosus, and they've got it in lots of it. And that's a parasite to be avoided at all costs. So, how do you avoid it when you catch it? By contamination from dog feces, which has the eggs in it, because the dog has the adult form of this parasite. And so that's the one I would be the most afraid of in Patagonia. I've been to Patagonia. I've traveled throughout the countryside. I've fortunately never been approached by a sheepdog to come up and pet. So, the prospects of being exposed were low. And I never worried about waterborne infections at all. While I was there, the water was absolutely beautiful and pristine. But because of the sheep raising aspect, you've still got this echinococcus problem.
Echinococcus granulosum.
That's granulosus.
Granulosus.
Yes.
I like that.
I hate to be a pedant, but that's
No,
the way
no,
it
it's
is.
fine. You have to get the right words. Okay, Visto says the man o' war stinging jellyfish is a
Yes,
collection of separate animals.
correct.
How could this arrangement ever come about?
If Lynn Margulis were alive, she
Now, what
could
would she say?
probably attempt an answer for that. But the nematocysts is what I think you're referring to. The stinging part of the tentacles
Hmm.
are little projectiles. They almost look like darts, and they're all coiled up. And then when they are released, they insert their barb into the skin of the animal that they're attacking. And there's a toxin associated with it, which ends up stunning or even killing the animal. And usually it's a little fish of some sort. Um, how something like that could have ever come about in terms of a relationship is anybody's guess. In fact, it's so fantastical that opposers of evolution use examples like that and saying it's impossible for anything like that to arise other than God. God will easily be able to make this. God can do everything, but nature couldn't possibly have done that. And so there
Hmm.
was an argument once about just that concept about the molecular motor of the flagellum on a bacteria. And this arose in a court in Pennsylvania. And I don't know if you're familiar with that one or not, Vincent, but the prosecutor arguing that evolution shouldn't be taught in school because only God could make an organism so complicated in its biology, so that they hired a molecular biologist. I forget who he was from, maybe MIT or someplace like that, and he was given a month to rebut the argument. And he came in with a wheelbarrow full of journals showing the evolution of the molecular motor
Hmm.
for the flagellum. and then all the parts were present in other organisms, and they got cobbled together by either conjugation and exchange of DNA and stuff like this. And so the judge dismissed the case and said, "You can teach evolution because here's the proof." But it
Well, I think
pays
it
to know the
happened.
facts. You have to know the facts.
Of course,
You can't be
I
guessing
think
at
it
all
happened
this.
very slowly, Dixon.
Of happened extremely slowly.
Yeah, multiple animals, one at a time,
Oh
over
yeah,
time,
absolutely,
each showing a
absolutely.
benefit and then an improvement.
You bet.
Helen wants to know how the jellyfish fits in the food chain.
Go ask a turtle.
Turtles eat jellies?
They love them.
Really?
Oh,
Oh,
that's what
Dixon, you are just a font of knowledge.
they thrive on it. Not all of them. Some of them eat the grasses, but there are turtles that eat like jellyfish. They just like them. The peanut fish, not so much, but the jellyfish, yes.
All right.
That was a joke. That was a
Um,
joke.
Elena wants to know what your thoughts on carcinization. Do you know what that is, Dixon?
How do you create a cancerous situation?
No, no. It's
I have no
how a
idea what that word
crustacean
means.
evolves into a crab-like form without from a non-crab. How do you become a crab from a non-crab-like form?
So
How
my
it's
answer to that is quite simple.
Yep.
I once had the pleasure of having lunch almost once a week with this famous evolutionary biologist. His name was Theodosius Dobzhansky,
Mm,
and he was the first geneticist. He was the first geneticist, basically. He and several others at Columbia University invented genetics, and he was a Drosophila geneticist, the very first Drosophila geneticist. And I listened to him talk about the process of evolution as he understood it. And he was very careful with his words and very slow in his speech. And you didn't get much of an explanation out of him for anything because there's a lot we don't know. And the question that you've just asked is one of those deep questions that nobody has an answer for you.
yeah.
I wouldn't even know where to begin.
I have to. Andy likes the centaur joke, so let me tell you the centaur joke. What do you call the mythical creature that is half horse and half virologist? The centaur for disease control.
Good one.
So, Annie,
And prevention.
that one's for you.
I
Let's.
like it. That's very good.
Nevitz says, please consider Christopher Tice about the gut virus brain connection. Okay, I wrote the name down. Thank you very much for that. Dixon, I read the Kissing Bug book. I
Oh, yeah,
enjoyed it a lot. I learned a lot as I often take care of people from Latin America.
right. I have yet to read it, but I know most of the details because, of course, you have to know a lot about the vectors in order to know how the disease is spread.
It's true.
And the kissing bug uh, played a role in
Reduvido.
Riduvido. That's right. That's right. Triatoma. Triatoma.
You sound like you're from New Jersey now.
Here,
Triatoma.
triatoma.
Hey,
Well,
Dixon, triatoma. You'll like it.
that's right. Exactly. There you go.
It's so bad.
It was
I'm
very bad.
sorry. I'm sorry.
But But Darwin was on the Beagle, the ship, the Beagle,
Right.
and touring with Captain Fitzroy. They landed in Valparaiso, which is on
Mm,
the west coast of South America in Chile.
right.
And Darwin hiked. He must have been quite athletic. He hiked over the Andes Mountains to get a look at what's on the other side. And in doing so, he had to sleep in some very interesting places, like native thatched roofed huts, for instance.
Hmm.
And he was essentially attacked by Raduvido. That's true. Because they come out at night and they take blood meals, and you don't know that they're doing
Mm.
that because that's why they're called the kissing bug. The other name for them is the assassin bug because they carry a deadly parasite, right? But interestingly enough, Darwin never developed trypanosomiasis.
Mm.
So that Riduvido in those areas were either free of the infection or he didn't rub his eyes to get the feces from the tritomid bug into his eye to start the infection. But the story is real, and you can read about it in his diary.
Tona says Dickson should serve on a task force of what New York City should do with the empty workplace buildings.
Well, that's a very nice thought. I wouldn't say no if someone asked me. I did write an article once for the Wall Street Journal on that. So if you go back in the archives, you can find it. It's about 2 years old now. And I agree. There's a lot of office, and nobody wants to go back. The people that have adjusted to their lives during the pandemic at home think they can get as much work done at home as they can at the office, and there's no commute. And you get to do homework as well. You get to take care of the children sometimes. You get to start the dinner out, and you don't waste a lot of time doing things that you ordinarily would, like getting on a train and going for 2 hours to Greenwich, Connecticut and back. So, yeah, I if I would ask to serve on one, I would, but I don't even know if there is a task force on that.
Should be.
Hey, guess what I heard today?
What?
The World Cup finals will be held in New York and New Jersey.
Really?
For the year 2026. So gird yourself, everybody, because
it's going to
in
be
the
a
summer.
mess, man.
In the summer, they're going to have a lot of new people in town.
How many months does that run?
What, the tournament?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think it's months. I think it's maybe a month and a half or something like that.
Okay, that's not so bad.
No, but still, it's very disruptive. But the mayor of New York said that they stand to make about $2 billion in revenue as the result of tourists coming into New York for the first time.
I'm sure. Okay.
So why don't they use that money to redo the buildings, make them into vertical farms?
Well, not this one. This is a building that I need to stay in here.
How many people are in your building versus how many people could be in your building?
Angela Mingarelli is here. Hello, Angela.
Hey.
From Montreal. Thanks for joining us in the last 15 minutes. It's okay. I know you were working hard in the lab most likely.
Absolutely.
Hat says, Dickson, I watch a podcast called TWIV, and they have beat into my ignorant head over the years that in viruses, infection merely means the presence of replicating virus versus disease.
I would agree. Vincent, you agree?
Dickson has been on TWIV for many years. He knows that. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's the big difference between an infection and a disease.
Yeah.
Not all infections result in disease. How's that?
Nicola writes, maybe I said this in another live stream, but I think it would be cool to have Lydia Buruiba on TWIV, head of fluid dynamics of disease transmission. Yeah, I wrote it down, Nicola.
Huh.
I think it would be a great idea. Visto says, the new dengue vaccine, how did they avoid ADE? Well, they made sure that it had a good response to all 4 serotypes. That was the problem with the other one. It didn't make a good anti-2. Right. And then for 2, it acted like the first infection, which then led to ADE. So relatively straightforward. Carol wants to know if you eat raw fish, Dickson.
I do. Purposefully.
And you make sure it's frozen first, right?
I actually don't. I assume they do. I'm making the assumption that they do. I've never had an attack of anisakiasis or any of those other anisakids that you can catch from eating raw fish. In the old days, they were quite prevalent, and that's why the rules suddenly came up.
Yeah.
If you flash freeze it in liquid nitrogen, the texture of the meat doesn't change. But the moment you thaw it, the parasite dies. And so that's the basis for this.
So before we were talking about the critters in your eyes, remember?
The Demodex follicularum.
Right. So G. Ferraro says, seriously, I just washed my eyelashes. How do you wash your eyelashes? How do you wash your eyelashes?
Wait, are these your eyelashes or are they prosthetic eyelashes?
Well, I didn't know you could wash just your eyelashes. It seems to me you have to wash your whole face, no?
You would,
What do I
but
know?
you can't wash these little mites out of your eyes. If you
Eh,
could, of course, that would be a big problem.
John contributed by Venmo. Thank you for your contribution to science communication, John. We appreciate it. Questella says fleas and lice are parasites too, right?
You bet. They're called ectoparasites.
Yeah. Vista wants to know, do all mammals get genes from bacteria sometimes? Yeah, we think so. There's good evidence for bacterial genes in animal genomes. We've actually talked about that on TWIM a few times.
We have.
Yeah. Everybody exchanges genes.
That's right.
Is it feasible to use bacteria for therapeutic gene manipulation? Yeah. In fact, we did a TWIM
Absolutely.
some time ago with Tal Danino from Colombia, who was engineering bacteria to be gene delivery vectors. Very interesting. Tal Danino, Danino. Search that in TWIM and you'll find it. It's quite interesting. Patricia wants to know why oranges don't have seeds anymore, Dickson.
Because people didn't want them, so they bred out the seed production portion of the plant by just replanting the seeds from oranges that had fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer seeds until
Hmm.
finally. Now, so how do you get a new orange tree then? Well, I asked first. I don't have to know the answer. I just have to know what the question is.
Oh, yeah.
So, how would you make a new orange tree when there were no seeds?
Yeah, you'd cut a branch and
No,
trans.
not you, Vincent. I know you know
Oh,
already.
sorry.
That's a
Oh,
question for everybody out there.
okay. We'll see if they answer it.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's
Plants
see
have
here.
many ways of overcoming adversity. And in times of, let's say, either nutritional deficiencies or weather events
Yeah.
or both, they don't produce seeds,
Mm,
but they still multiply and they still grow. And they grow what they call vegetative propagation. The root systems grow out and the new plants come up every now and then. I don't think trees do much of that. I don't know any that do, as a matter of fact, but
mm,
I think they have other ways of circumventing. Oh my God, I don't have any more seeds. And by the
mm.
way, that's a commercial product. In nature, there's the orange trees that are out there that are growing wild, and there are many of them. They've all got lots of seeds. I don't mind seeds.
Are there seedless lemons, Dixon? Someone asks.
I haven't counted any. I don't know.
Tona
I,
wants to know.
I do not know. I do not
Mike
know.
Mike wants to know why they call bacterial viruses bacteriophages. Yeah.
It's a good question.
Well, when they were phage means to eat, right? And they thought when they were first discovered, they made the bacteria disappear, so they thought they were eating them, but obviously they're not. They're just lysing them, right? But the name
Right,
stuck. So, all
right.
right, this is for Dixon. Laura writes, I've read about the effects of high worm loads on IQ in children. I think it's attributed to constant anemia and a low nutrient diet. And wondering if you heard this.
Oh, yes, I have. In fact, Peter Hotez is a proponent of that.
Hmm.
Um, the the connection between normal brain development, all right, and a child that's born from a mother that's anemic to begin with, so the child will be anemic as
Hmm.
well, but not as anemic as the mother because the child is, if you'll excuse the expression, parasitic on the mother and obtains nutrients at the expense of the mother. So they are born at least with the capacity to have a normal hemoglobin profile, but if their nutrition is bad, then that's not going to work out. Hookworm is a disease that does deplete blood, and you develop something called iron deficiency, hookworm anemia, rather. And the hookworm anemia is thought to be associated with um, a loss of normal brain function, including your ability to reason. And you can measure that in various different ways. And certainly they did a lot of those studies after the Civil War in the South. because hookworm infection was rampant throughout the South. And they found a correlation between
Sure was.
hookworm infection and the ability of a person to reason normally. It's not correctable by getting rid of the hookworm and improving the nutrition. The damage to the nervous system is considered permanent, and it's unfortunate because there are some neurologic diseases that are correctable by nutritional restoration, but that's not one of them. And a lot of the world suffers as a result.
Gary says, Dickson, I'm inspired by your breadth of knowledge and wide ranging curiosity. Always great to see you on TWIP.
Well, I'm honored and flattered that you should say so. And I will continue to be on this show as long as I'm asked.
You are always asked. Don't worry about it. Let's see here. We're reaching the last few minutes. Let me find some quick questions that we can go through.
I meant to also just throw in a parenthetical phrase here. I've reached the ripe age of 83. And when you get to be 83, a lot of what you mistake for knowledge is just experience. And I'm guilty of that because you hear a lot. And sometimes you even remember what you hear. So a lot of what I say, I didn't make up or I didn't invent myself, but I'm obviously quoting lots of people who knew more than I did about that subject. That's why I love teaching.
I know you do. Hold on. Yes. Okay. Let's see what else. Anything else here? Lots of great questions left, but we don't have time to come with to answer most of them because they're involved.
I would like to ask the audience a question.
Yes, go ahead.
And that is, what role will Taylor Swift play in the next election?
Oh my gosh.
I'm amazed that one person in the popular press, so to speak, she did have the album of the year. She is an extremely attractive woman. She also was in favor of Biden in the last election. So what they're predicting is that if she were to support Biden in this election, then Trump wouldn't have a chance. Now, what do you think of that? I'm amazed that one person could alter an election like that, and I can't believe that everybody who likes Taylor Swift would also vote the way she does. She's a wonderful singer, but that doesn't mean I like her politics.
Well,
that sort of thing.
John says she should ask her followers to vote.
Yeah, maybe. At least just get out and vote. That the point is, it's a young crowd.
Crestella is going to vote for me. Me, I don't think that would be a good thing. But depends what you're voting for, right?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to just scroll through the end here and to see if there's anyone else. There's some great comments here from Jeff. Had a bunch of comments on nuclear power. Jeff says the fast breeders would reduce the volume of current waste stockpile and reduce its half-life, thus requiring less storage. So fast nuclear breeders, Dickson.
Okay.
And he says also takes a lot of energy to produce hydrogen via electrolysis, thus the need for the molten salt fast reactors. Fusion may never prove viable.
Yeah, fusion is a tougher deal, but I think to split water with electrolysis using photovoltaics is a real good approach. And if you set up that system in a semi-arid region of the world, then I think that you could have a constant supply of hydrogen. And it's storable. It's storable. It's you can compress it.
Yeah.
Or you can create ammonia using it, and then you can store ammonia, which is a liquid, and you can really.
Right. Kent, the cat guy, thank you for your contribution to science communication. We appreciate your support and enthusiasm about our work. Dickson, do you have fruit trees?
I live in an apartment. No, I don't. But we raised edibles on our porch. So we do basil and oregano and thyme and sage, tomatoes, that sort of thing.
Will says Swift will get more people voting, Dickson.
I hope so. And that's all you need is people with common sense to go out and vote, and then I think the result will be predictable. But if common sense does not prevail, then we will live by Mark Twain's famous saying that the most uncommon thing in the world is common sense.
You know what Mark Twain also said? He said, "The more I get to know people, the more I like my dog."
That's right. And
But
if you
I
want
love
one more,
everybody here on this stream. In fact, I'm going to make a heart sign, not using my thumbs. See, with
you
these,
can do this.
you can do it with your palm, but I used to do it with my thumbs, but that's the cheater. And I see a lot of people doing it with these fingers, mostly women with long fingers,
Yeah,
but
you're
I
right.
can't do. Anyway, folks, thank you so much for coming. Love you all. Thanks to the moderators. We had Vanity Nutrition. We had Les. We had Steph SF. We had Frank. We had Les. We had Barb Mac UK. I think I hit everyone. Vanity Nutrition. Oh, Andrew. Can't forget you guys. Thank you so much for coming and moderating tonight. And thanks all of you for coming. All 185 of you came to hear Dickson.
Good
We
time.
will be back. Thank you, Dickson, for coming tonight. I appreciate it.
Oh, I love it. I love doing this.
We'll do it more often. Next week we will do this again on Wednesday the 14th, which is Valentine's
It
Day.
is. Yes, it is.
I have to do something on Valentine's Day, right?
Give
I don't
everybody a
know.
nice heart. Give everybody a nice heart.
I don't know what I'll do. I'll figure something else. Oh, Siddhartha, thank you so much for your contribution to science communication. I really appreciate your support. That'll do it for another office hours where you can come and chat and hear bad jokes and listen to parasites, talk about parasites and viruses and bacteria and more. Have a safe evening and a safe week, everybody. We will see you next week. Good night.
Good night.